Welcome to the show. Today we're joined by Will Jordan, also known as the Critical Drinker. He's a writer and YouTuber that have found massive success with his channel of movie critiques done with a sense of humor. In today's episode we talk about what makes a good story and why the art of good storytelling, especially in Hollywood, seems to have taken a back seat lately in favor of pushing
the message.
Enjoy. Welcome to the podcast. So nice of you to be here.
My pleasure.
We've been big fans of your channel for a long time, and it's so grateful of you as a much bigger channel to support us, the little guys. And
Thing is, well, we were all little guys at some point, you know. Everyone has to start somewhere, and if I can help out a little bit, then I'm happy to do it.
yes, speaking of that, how did you start out? Who are you, and what do you do?
Yeah, so I mean, I started messing around on YouTube probably 10 years ago. I was just kind of interested in learning a little bit about video editing and all that stuff, and the idea of doing reviews was kind of appealing to me. So I, did a few movie reviews, some TV shows, some books, that kind of thing. Just all very simple stuff, I don't think my old videos even exist anymore, but I gradually learned a few things, and I was able to work jokes and stuff into it, and have a bit of fun with it. And my channel was doing okay. I mean, it was tiny, but like I had a few hundred subscribers, and I was starting to get a little bit of momentum. But then I was also a writer, and an aspiring writer at the time, and I got my first publishing deal. And so I had to kind of knock YouTube on the head for a good number of years, because I really just wanted to focus on writing and developing that career and not be split between different things, and then it was only a couple of years ago that I kind of had a bit more time to look at it again. And I thought, I always enjoyed doing this stuff on YouTube. I liked making videos. I liked putting my opinions out there. And it seemed like a really good time to do it, because I was really starting to notice, probably like you guys have as well, like the changes that were coming over entertainment, the way movies were changing, and not for the better. Like the writing was going downhill. They were injecting more and more politics into it. They were doing crappy remakes of classic franchises. And I just thought I wanted to comment on it. I wanted to give my opinions on that, and push back a little bit against it, even with my tiny little channel that still had a couple hundred subscribers somehow. And like one of my videos just went viral. I don't know what happened, but I think I had a few drinks before I recorded the audio, and my voice was all slurred, and just people absolutely took to it. And before I knew it, I had 10,000, 15,000, 20,000 subscribers. Like it just kept going up and up. And it was just one of those overnight things, like, holy crap, this is doing well. I should probably keep doing this kind of thing. And the Critical Drinker was born.
That's how it happens sometimes. You just stumble onto something. Do you remember what the video was about?
I think it was about Captain Marvel.
Yeah.
Because that was a real firestorm around that movie just in the run up to release. And it's some of the things that they were trying to promote it with, like saying, finally we're getting a strong female character on screen, and all that nonsense. And I just thought, nah, fuck off. Like we've had decades of this before. We've had much better characters than this. And so I just did a kind of a sarcastic video agreeing with that notion, but then showing all these amazing characters from all the different decades. And people absolutely got it. Like they got the sarcasm involved. And that's what I think launched me. And for a while I toyed with that idea of making every video sarcastic. So I would say one thing and show the exact opposite. But I realized pretty quickly, okay, people are going to get tired of that, and it's going to be pretty restrictive to try and do it that way. So, I'll ditch that and just, give my real opinions, but do it as the drinker, and do it in that comedic way and just have fun with it. So that's been my strategy since then.
A lot of your videos kind of highlights the problem with the current storytelling. So when you do your own storytelling, how do you kind of figure it out? How do you build your stories?
I know there's two schools of thought with how you write a book. You can either plan it out in advance, or some people just fly by the seat of their pants and just make it up as they go along. I'm very much in the former category. I really like to plan my books so I know where I'm going with it. And I can avoid writing myself into a corner because, man, there's nothing worse than getting like halfway through a book and realizing you've fucked up and you're going to have to go back and change half of it. That is soul destroying to have to do. So yeah, I plan mine out in advance. And in terms of like the storytelling and stuff, I want to have a good arc for my characters. I don't want them to be the same people at the end as they were at the beginning. I want their actions to make sense from what we know about their personalities, so they don't act out of character, because that really takes you out of the experience. And yeah, I want the story to have a few twists and turns and revelations that the audience hopefully doesn't see coming. You know, and maybe put in a few red herrings here and there. They think they've had the twist in the story, and then there's something else on top of that. Like, there's lots of different things you can do to keep people guessing. And yeah, that's my aim, just to provide an enjoyable reading experience, I guess, for my audience.
That's so revolutionary that you just want to make a good product.
I know, yeah. I like when it comes to politics and stuff, I have got no axes to grind. I have got no message that I'm trying to put forward. I just want to have fun and tell a good story. That's my one and only objective.
Are you a strong believer in Chekhov's gun?
Oh, Chekhov's gun. Well, it depends if you want to misdirect people, because you can use it in that way. But like, generally speaking, yeah, I don't want to set things up and then not use them, because it's ultimately kind of an unfulfilling experience for the audience. So yeah, in the main, I agree with the premise of Chekhov's gun.
So no big subverting expectations or anything.
I mean, you can always play around with the unexpected a little bit, because like I said before, you don't want an audience that feels like they know the story beat for beat before it even happens, and they know exactly what the characters are going to be all about. So it's good to do the unexpected occasionally, but you shouldn't just go into it with the goal of, I'm just going to constantly do the opposite of what people expect me to do, because then you're just pigeonholing yourself into a whole different category of writing. You know, it's just the same problem but reversed. So yeah, surprises here and there, all good. You know, ultimately, if it's in service of telling a good story, I don't mind how you approach it.
What made you decide to write a book from the beginning? Was it something you always wanted in your life, or?
Yeah, it was something I was always interested in. Like, even when I was a little kid, you know, I loved the idea of storytelling. I was always able to get lost in a good story, whether it was a comic book or a novel or whatever. And yeah, that just grew over time. And, you know, as time went on, with the internet came to be, you could post things online and on message boards or writing forums or whatever and get feedback for it. And that's how I got my start. I just wrote short stories to begin with, and gradually they got longer and longer. And eventually I ran out of reasons not to do a novel. I thought, well, you know, because you, when you're younger, you tell yourself like, oh, these authors who produce these big, you know, hardcover books, you know, their brains must operate on a different level. There's no way I could ever do that. I know the longer your stories get, the more your confidence grows, and the more you think eventually, oh, maybe I could do that. It might not get published, but I could at least write it. And that's how I got started. You know, I found an agent pretty quickly. Actually, before my book was even finished, which was a big mistake. I really shouldn't have done that. Because they saw the first few chapters and they said, okay, cool, let me see the rest of it. And I thought I was going to have months before I even got a reply. And I was like, oh shit, I had to lock myself away for like the whole weekend and finish it. So that was fun. But yeah, I just went from there. So I think, you know, compared to some authors, I had a pretty easy time of it getting published. Like, some people, they spend, you know, a decade trying to get there. But yeah, it was fairly quick for me.
The Ryan Drake novels is kind of a good spy thriller action kind of, yeah, and good romp.
Yeah.
And it's in but do you have any kind of special inspiration from that kind of genre?
Probably when I just thought about the things that I would want to read. You know, I was always a fan of like adventure novels or movies, you know, things where the characters get to travel all around the world. They get to, you know, go to exotic places. There's some kind of like mystery to unravel or a race against time. You know, there's big explosive action scenes. There's femme fatales. There's, you know, all this cool stuff. And it's the sort of thing that I always found enjoyable. It's just good, fun, escapist entertainment. And so I thought, well, if I enjoy it, then that makes sense to write about it, because who's going to write about stuff that they're not interested in, you know?
Do you have any kind of military background to
Myself, no,
No,
I've never
okay.
served in the military. I had to just try and research it as best I could.
Yeah. Do you think that your writing books have kind of helped you craft your YouTube videos?
Yes, absolutely. Because ultimately, the kind of videos I produce, I use a script. I'll write the script beforehand and then perform it, and then do all the editing and stuff. So to have that writing experience and just know how to, it's hard to describe, but like each review, I try to craft it into a kind of narrative so that it's got a well-defined premise at the beginning, some sort of intro, then the meat of the review, and then a conclusion that's going to tie it all back to that opening intro. Usually try and do it in a funny way, kind of thing, or some kind of theme that I'm following. And I generally find it's a more satisfying experience for the audience. It feels like you've gone on a little journey, with this review, and had a bit of a laugh along the way, hopefully. And it's helped me in that regard, and it's just helped me have that discipline to sit down and write, because obviously with a book you've got to sit down night after night and grind out those pages, and you might not always want to because it's a long process, but you have to. And so it's the same with doing a review, but it's a lot quicker and easier now. So yeah, I find it pretty easy now because of all this.
Do you think your YouTube fame has kind of helped you sell books?
Yeah, I would say so. Yeah, because now, like, if I've got a new one coming out, I can put out posts, or I can mention it, and it'll get seen by 1 million people. I mean, that's, publishing houses in this country and maybe in America as well, they would kill to have that kind of reach. So, I feel pretty lucky in that regard.
And your book is going to be a movie as well, right?
Yeah. So the first one, Redemption, they are working on turning that into a film. Like, they got a script. I think they've got a budget for it, and they're trying to shoot it in places where you get a lot of tax breaks. Like Eastern Europe's pretty good for all that sort of thing. Morocco, I think, would double for Iraq. And I'm not going to pretend it's some $200 million like mega blockbuster that it's going to be. It's an independent studio, so they're limited budget wise, but we'll see what comes of it. It'll be cool to see it happen if it does get made. Every author is kind of interested to see what someone else's take on their book is going to be. So we'll see what I get.
Yeah, isn't it really fucking cool to get a movie made out of one of your books? I would be.
Yeah. Yeah.
I think it's just a big thing, even if it's a small movie to start off with.
Yeah. Well, they did say I can go to the premiere, so they'll spring me a couple of tickets. So that's all right.
How very charitable.
Yeah.
Yeah, as an author, I mean, this is kind of your baby in a way. Were there any hesitations of handing over the reins, all the creative decisions to a studio, even if it's a small one?
I mean, you always wonder what they're going to do with it, but it's such an opportunity, and you get caught up in the excitement of it. Yeah, there's not many people that are going to say no, and for me, it was just kind of a no-brainer. I was more than happy to give it a shot.
You are coming out with a new book very soon.
Yeah, so that is called Dark Harvest, and that's going to be coming out in August. And it's kind of it's a combination of lots of things. It's got a little bit of historical mystery in it. It's an action thriller with like bioterrorism worked into it, and a little bit of like 28 Days Later style zombie mayhem. So it's a little bit of everything. I'd always, because I was a big fan of like the Resident Evil games and zombie movies and stuff, I always wanted to do something along those lines. So this is my take on it, and we'll see how it goes. And I worked in a real historical mystery that happened back in the 50s that's kind of like the backdrop to it. Again, I love a good mystery. It's like an unsolved mystery. It's always kind of cool. So it was fun to work that in.
Why, with your, let's call it, eclectic knowledge of science fiction, did you not venture into kind of that arena?
Yeah, people have asked me. They've asked me to do sci-fi and fantasy books. My publishers, my editors and stuff have been interested in me doing that. And yeah, it's something I would be interested in doing, but I wouldn't do it unless I felt like I could do some kind of unique take on it. I wouldn't just want to do another generic sci-fi novel or another generic fantasy story with, with your usual elves and dwarves and all that stuff. Like there would have to be something that would grab me and make me think this is really interesting. It's a bit different. And I haven't really found that yet. And I think as well, the work involved in creating an entire fantasy universe rather than just setting it in the world that we live in, that's a lot more planning and a lot more backstory that you have to then come up with. So it's a much bigger project to do something like sci-fi or fantasy.
So when we're talking YouTube videos, and how do you choose your kind of targets for reviews?
So there's two strands to it, I suppose. Like generally, whatever's out at the moment will be my movie that I review. Like there's been a big new release, something like Jurassic World's the most recent one, or a big Marvel movie or a Star Wars film, something like that. It makes sense to review them because I go on the basis of, okay, I'm reviewing it to say, is it worth my audience going to see it? Like, will they enjoy it if they go see it? And so that's my baseline. But then I've got the opportunity to just talk about stuff that interests me once in a while. Like that's why I've kind of got my second channel where I can cover older movies that I just think I enjoyed as I was growing up and like maybe want to share them with other people. And it's great because sometimes, you get people who never heard of the film or they passed it up and they go watch it and they have an absolute blast with it. So that always makes me feel good. It's nice to be positive once in a while,
Yeah, your drinker recommends is like a who's who of my childhood favorite movies. So yeah, I see the point.
Yeah.
We had talked to Midnight Edge a week ago or so, and we asked the same thing, that because for us, it's almost more fun watching channels like yours trash the latest Star Wars movie or the Obi-Wan Kenobi series than actually sitting through it ourselves.
Yeah.
And I mean, I only saw the first of the new Star Wars movies, and I'm not gonna touch Star Wars ever again. And I was a big Star Wars fan. How do you make yourself sit through it?
I mean, I suffer so that other people don't have to. I mean, it's in that sense, it's kind of a job, and part of a job means doing things that you wouldn't necessarily want to. And yeah, that's how you get through it. And yeah, like there's usually, as much as they're usually shit, it's a little intellectual challenge because then you have to puzzle out, well, why does it not work? Why is it bad? How could it be done differently? Then at least you've got something to grapple with. And that's what I try to do with my reviews. It's not just about me sitting there and banging my fist on the table and yelling about how much I hate something. I'll explain why and try to offer alternative suggestions on how something could have been done, like a character could have been written differently or whatever, or a scene could have played out differently to make it more effective. Then that gives me something interesting that I can grapple with as a writer and a creative, I suppose.
It feels like since like 2015-16 and in Ghostbusters remake, it's been kind of a trend of them just intersecting the message and just ruining movie after movie, franchise after franchise. Why do you think they do this? And I mean, because they all go bust one after another. This get woke or broke.
Yeah, I mean, one, because it's you're socially incentivized to do it. It looks good on your company resume to say like, well, we're pushing progressive politics and trying to make the world a better place. I think the ESG score that companies get now, especially in the States, is a pretty big factor in that now, because that determines like how much people are going to invest in you. If you've got a high ESG score, you're much more likely to get outside investment. And so yeah, it almost doesn't matter if the movies that they produce get trashed. That score will remain high, and if it was to dip, if they didn't push the message, I think they would find themselves running out of investors. And so it's a thing that I guess they have to grapple with. But ultimately, it's a choice of, do you want investment or do you want to actually make revenue from your films because people aren't watching them? You can only absorb so many flops, no matter how big you are, before you have to do something different. I mean, it's my hope that eventually they'll find some kind of balance, where they I don't think we're ever going to go back to like the 1980s where you've just got gung-ho action movies and women are just damsels in distress to be rescued and all that stuff. Like it's not going to happen like that, and perhaps it shouldn't. But they need to find some kind of balance where they can keep the politics out of it, but still have a decently balanced cast. Fair sort of representation for people. It's the only way that they're going to win back their audiences, I think.
It's kind of interesting because Hollywood was kind of known for having a non-diverse cast, and they kind of fucked everyone over, looked away when Harvey Weinstein diddled all and everyone. And suddenly, do you think it is the, what do you call it, the duplicity in it all that annoys people so much? Or
I think because Ricky Gervais said this best when he did that Golden Globes speech. He was just like, look, shut up about your politics. You have got no right to lecture the rest of the world about being good people. You're assholes. You're rich, you're spoiled, entitled narcissists who've never really worked a day in your lives. And you cover up for people like Harvey. So you do not have the moral high ground here. And he's right. He's absolutely right. And I think what happens in the wake of him and that whole Me Too movement is they overcompensated because they went into full-on panic mode. Like, oh my God, we have to show the world that we're not just about harboring predators and stuff, that we're fair towards women and minorities and everyone else, and we're going to go all out to make ourselves look as inclusive as we can be. And what they've done is they've just completely overcompensated for it.
The message now is kind of a pop culture meme where you actually made it a thing and people are starting to using it independently of you. How do you feel about this?
It's really funny. If I just happen to be watching a YouTuber that I like or whatever, and all of a sudden the message will pop up. It's great. I don't know why it caught on the way it did. Honestly, I just I just looked up like some kind of image that best encapsulated all this nonsense, and eventually managed to track one down. And then I thought, what can I do to make it stand out? It's like I'll do a big booming voice that goes over it, every time. People just seem to like it.
It so greatly sums up all the things that they cram down on movie audiences' throats nowadays. And it's not just in the movies, it's in everything, not just culture, but also in, of course, politics, but definitely in academia.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And you can't have a discussion in academia anymore because then you get canceled, you lose your position in the university, you don't get the grades you want, even down to teenagers nowadays, especially in Sweden, where if you don't agree with the message, you get lower grades.
I feel so sorry for these kids now going to universities and college because they're taking young, impressionable people who haven't got that much experience yet in the world and just filling their heads full of absolute garbage. And of course, they're going to take it in. If you've got some, big, intelligent professor who's 2 or 3 times your age and knows all about life and the world, and they're telling you this is the way it is, then of course you're going to listen to them. And of course you're going to believe this stuff. And you're going to go out into the world just filled with this garbage. And it's no wonder that this is what we end up with now. I'm just thankful, like I went to university in the mid-2000s, so I got out of that system before any of this stuff kicked in. But yeah, I would imagine most of these campuses are a pretty miserable place where everyone is just constantly fearing for their lives if they say the wrong thing.
What did you study at university?
Information technology. Because that was what I got into as my career, like before writing and stuff. I did like web design and copy editing, that sort of thing.
So my theory was that we might have met the first English major that actually became a writer.
Yeah, no, I have never taken a single creative writing course. I've never studied it at university or college or anything like that. Didn't bother. I just learned it myself.
How did you kind of when you wrote the first book? How hard was it to kind of condense the text and make it a proper story? Usually, when people do the first thing, it's always bloated. So how? Yeah.
Well, you get an editor. my agent did the first round of editing just to trim it down a little bit, and then when I got my first publishing deal, again, you've got an in-house editor who's going to make a lot of recommendations for you, and it's always that battle. The editors want a book that's as lean and mean as possible. The author wants, a really rich narrative with loads of detail, and so you're always at loggerheads. They always want less text. Authors want more, but unless you're an asshole, like you do well to listen to your editor and take their advice on board, especially if you're starting out. You're not really in a position to start stamping your authority down and saying, no, this will stay in no matter what. So this is what I think happens to authors when they get too powerful and too successful. They don't, nobody's brave enough to challenge them then. Like their editor won't push them hard enough, and so they get complacent. And they start to believe that everything they produce is like perfect on its first draft. That's why their books tend to get like longer and lower quality over time.
George R.R. Martin.
Exactly. There you go. Any editor with half a brain would have said, no, this is way too complicated. You've got to cut it down a bit, George. And you have to be on contract to produce the next book. You can't just take 10 years over it.
Do you think he's ever going to publish the last few books?
He'll probably finish Winds of Winter eventually, but there's no way he's ever going to finish A Dream of Spring. So he will never finish A Song of Ice and Fire in its entirety. I just don't think he's got it in him anymore.
No.
I think, the narrative is too complicated. It's taken up too much of his time. He's got too many distractions because he can't say no to anything. Like he's taken on all these different production gigs and working on video games and stuff. And he's old. He's well into his 70s, and he's not in the best of health by the looks of things. And yeah, like the older you get, the less creative energy you've got. It's hard enough for me at my age to grind out another book, to really put in that time and put in the late nights and stuff to get it finished. So I can't imagine what it's like if you're in your mid 70s. Like, yeah, I just don't think he's ever going to finish it now.
Back to the YouTube business a little bit. We see you collaborate a lot with other people back and forth. So how has it been to find this kind of huge community with people that kind of have the same thoughts about how the world works and everything, and the same basic opinions at least?
It's great. Yeah, it's great, man. I mean, honestly, like the 99% of the time we all get on amazing. And these guys have always been like super supportive and super helpful. Like, if you ask them to do a little cameo in a video or to give you a bit of material for something that you want to make or whatever, they will always be happy to help out. And I think that's a great kind of supportive network of people there. It's really good. And yeah, like when we're bantering away on streams, like it's not an act. Like we talk to each other just like that behind the scenes as well. Like it's great fun. So it's good to know that there's other people out there who feel the same as I do.
Yeah, that was a big thing for me actually. Early before YouTube, before I found YouTube anyway, I felt very, very isolated because I thought I was going completely fucking mad because all my pop culture going to complete shit. I've been an avid nerd for close to 35 years. So basically, and suddenly everything was turning really, really fucking bad. And I couldn't understand what was happening. I actually had a session with my therapist and laying out the problem that I have no enjoyment of either film or books or anything. I thought everything was on me. But obviously, and then I started watching people like you and other people on YouTube, and okay, it's not only me. It felt kind of actually great.
It's like the silent majority now. It seems like the majority of people feel the same way. It's just they're not in a position to make their thoughts known. Like they don't have that same platform that I've been lucky enough to get. And I think I was in that position after I watched The Last Jedi. I just came out of the movie theater just really bummed out about it, just feeling really down, and I couldn't quite work out what was wrong with it. I had a few inklings, like why, I read the reviews like from professional reviewers, like the journalists and stuff, and they were giving it glowing reviews, like this was the greatest Star Wars movie that's ever been. And I just thought, why am I hating it then? Why do I not like it? Have I missed something? Am I just not getting it? Have times changed and the things that I used to look for in stories just don't apply anymore. And same kind of situation as you. I went on YouTube and caught a couple of people who reviewed it. There was a couple that, like, I don't think they're even active now, but they gave the most spectacular rants about how much they hated it and all the problems in it. And I just instantly it clicked. I was like, I get it now. There's other people who feel the same way, and it's not just me. I'm not on my own on this one. So that was a feeling of relief.
I've seen now. I mean, for Kenobi, for example, Disney went on the preemptive strike attack, going after fans before it was even out. I mean, I'm guessing this is a sign that they know that they don't control the narrative fully anymore.
I think so, yeah. I think that particularly in the Star Wars community, like the number of people that have turned against them, and how like vocal they are and how well organized they are now, they know that anything that they produce is going to be under intense scrutiny. And the things that they were able to get away with in those early movies that they produced, because people didn't know any better back then, they can't do it now, because people will point it out and they will make enough noise that it probably will start to hurt their profits. And so, instead of doing something crazy like producing better content, they just decide, no, we're just going to like slander anyone who dares to criticize us preemptively. This is the reason there's such a horrible, toxic atmosphere around this and between the studio and the fans, because both sides are just out to antagonize the other at this point. So it's a death spiral, really, for a franchise like this.
How long do you think this will go on, and where will it end? Will it end with that no movies like this will ever be produced anymore? They're just going to drop Star Wars, Star Trek after Lord of the Rings flops now in the autumn? Are you just going to give up on any type of big budget franchise films that have a lot of big old audience?
I think Star Trek is really done effectively, unless because there's no money and there's no appetite for more movies. The TV shows, seems like everyone's hating them, or there's very little interest in them. Nobody's watching Discovery. Nobody's watching Picard. Like, the interest in that flatlined. Apparently Strange New Worlds is better, but I mean, I'll take that with a grain of salt. Star Wars is a bigger IP, and I think they are probably still pulling in enough casual viewers with these TV shows to keep it limping along. And it's funny because you can tell how casual the fan is now that they're trying to appeal to. Just they'll drop in a catchphrase like "hello there" or whatever in Kenobi, and that's what's going to get people clapping. That's the people that they're appealing to now. Just that really simplistic, like, oh, he did a thing that I remember. But yeah, I think the big one is going to be Lord of the Rings, because I was talking with Nerdrotic about this, and he made the very good point that the Lord of the Rings fan community, they have been forewarned about this. They have seen what's happened to other franchises, and they are not going to let this get a foothold. So unless it's somehow amazing, which I'm kind of dubious about, it's going to get absolutely slaughtered by the fans when it comes out.
And I have a feeling that Lord of the Rings fans are different from many other big fans, because I mean, my mom is a Lord of the Rings fan since 1970 something.
Yeah.
I mean, she wrote her master's studies on the Lord of the Rings and even mailed with Tolkien back then. So I think it's a new generation as well that's going to be having their childhood ruined.
Yes. I said before that the difference with the Lord of the Rings community is that they've had a lot longer to how can I put it, to mature, I suppose, because it's not like there was a new Lord of the Rings product getting released every few years or whatever. It's fairly contained. You had those original books by Tolkien, and really not much since then, apart from like a few of these like little collected works or like things that have been edited by his son, but they're not really like his. And yeah, we had the movie trilogy back in the early 2000s, and then which was obviously fantastic. The Hobbit, not so much, and then it's been quiet since then. Yeah, and I just think that they are going to be a lot less tolerant of shitty products because they've not really had to endure it the same way Star Wars fans have.
I saw the live stream you did the other day with the two Belgian guys.
Yes, Adele and Bilal. Yeah,
Yeah, they were really cool guys. So
they're really nice. Yeah.
do you think that the studios and the people in Hollywood have kind of noticed the YouTube sphere and started to observe it?
Well, I mean, according to what I've been told, yes. I mean, again, it always seems kind of surreal that people in Hollywood would even know who I am. Like, I'm just a guy from Scotland working out of his office. But yeah, maybe they do. I mean, it's some of my videos have gotten millions and millions of views. So maybe it does start to have an effect.
You do realize that you have larger reach than most talk show hosts of America.
Yeah, it's weird.
It's basically Tucker that's bigger, and then you are above all the rest.
Yeah, it's strange. It always does feel surreal, but no, it's a good opportunity because like I say, I don't have an axe to grind when it comes to pushing my own messages. I can just my goal is to just try and point out the problems of what's getting produced now, and try and show people, yeah, look, there's other ways to do this that are better and result in a more satisfying experience. And maybe we can try and get back to that a little bit. That would be nice.
My next question is, will you review The Boys season 3?
Probably, yeah. I've heard really mixed things about it, and I'm interested. I'm currently watching Stranger Things season 4, which gives me hope, actually, because season 3 was garbage as far as I'm concerned. The show was really going downhill, and it felt like the whole premise was played out. But they've somehow turned it around. It feels like they've actually listened to some of the criticism and tried to address it. And maybe The Boys can do something similar. Not sure. I think the issue I had with season 2 is that obviously it was political satire, same with season 1. But the difference is that it was only one-sided satire. And then it's not really about mocking things and satirizing like a lot of the culture war stuff going on. It's just about preaching one message. And that's it's the exact opposite of what it's supposed to be.
What do you think now with movies like the new Top Gun movie doing fantastic? And for that matter, the Spider-Man movies that don't have a message in them also doing great. And hopefully with the flop now coming of Lord of the Rings, do you think we're going to see a change? Do you think they're going to start realizing that money actually talks in Hollywood? Or are they going to continue with the message until everyone goes bankrupt?
I mean, I really hope so. I hope things like Top Gun show that, hey, what people just want is good old-fashioned classic entertainment, with heroes that they can look up to and action and all the rest of it. Doesn't need a message in order to be successful. I think even now there's probably more hunger for that kind of thing than ever because people have been getting so little of it over the past 10 years or so. And it would be great to think that they would take notice of that and say, hey, this is what works now. This is what people actually want. You can make $1 billion movie out of this. Awesome. Whether those old ESG scores come back to haunt them, I don't know. But something has to be done. They have to find some way of changing.
Reacher wasn't it the largest and most viewed series on Amazon Prime? Which is Reacher. It was an okay series. It wasn't that good, but it was still so much better than anything that's been along in many years. So
it shows you the hunger again for those kinds of characters like Reacher. He's your absolute alpha male character, strong, capable, emotionally guarded, doesn't break down crying every 5 minutes, and doesn't take any shit from anyone. Those are the kind of heroes that you used to get represented all the time on screen. And it actually shocked me that they did him justice and they portrayed him like that, because he honestly seems like the kind of thing that they would class as toxic masculinity nowadays. So I don't know how they got away with it, but they did, and people really liked it. And like you say, it wasn't amazing. The plot wasn't exactly complicated, and it wasn't done on a massive budget, clearly, but the hunger for that kind of thing is there for sure.
Are you a fan of what's his name? The guy that wrote the original The Boys, Garth Ennis, isn't it?
I don't know much about him.
He wrote Preacher and as well. Do you like that kind of? Have you watched Preacher?
Preacher?
Yes.
No, I haven't watched Preacher.
It's the same guy. It's actually, what's his name, Seth Rogen producing it, and it was actually better than expected. So I can give it a recommendation.
I'm shocked that Seth Rogen's managed to produce something good.
Yes, me too. But it was actually kind of okay.
Okay, no, fair enough.
With this climate now of taking everything that's toxic masculinity and turning it into something else, aren't you worried about your movie coming out that they're going to do something similar?
I mean, the conversations I've had, the people working on it are like, they don't adhere to that Hollywood mindset. So unless they're just bullshitting me, like I've got a bit of faith that they would do it justice. And the thing is, in the context of my book, like there's a fair balance, I would say, between the characters. It's not like Ryan Drake, the main character, is just this all-conquering hero, and everyone else kind of follows in his wake. Like Anya, his sort of co-lead, is equally capable as him, perhaps in some ways even more so because she's more experienced. And so if people are looking for that kind of element of the book, well, it is there. So
it's actually just a good story without all the...
Well, I mean, I don't know if it's good, but like it tried to be.
But do you think that just as with smaller YouTube channels now blowing up into these massive entities like your channel and smaller studios producing small movies like this, do you think there is a potentiality that this is going to overtake the big blockbuster Hollywood woke message type of content?
I don't think so, ultimately, because they've got so much money behind them, and all of that filters all the way down to the local cinemas. If you're a cinema like on the outskirts of town, what's going to make you more money? Is it going to be the newest Marvel movie, or is it going to be some art house flick by like a regional director, done for like $500,000 or whatever? It's a business model for them, and unfortunately, right now, the sad reality is these studios like Disney and Marvel and Lucasfilm, they've got so much power that it's hard to dislodge them. I think even someone like James Cameron was complaining about this, where it's just like they're just an assembly line of content, and they dominate cinema to such an extent that nothing else is really getting made, nothing else is getting the attention. That's why I was shocked, like, something like Dune could come out, which, didn't do amazing, but they put the budget behind it. So they obviously had some faith in it. And it's like, wow, something that's not a superhero flick. Who knew?
It was amazing. It was my first movie-going experience in over 10 years, I think. And I was so satisfied with that movie.
Yeah, it was good. I'll be interested to see where they go with part 2. I'm glad it's getting its sequel because I like Villeneuve as a director. I think his style's good for this, and hopefully they do a good job with it.
Do you think there will be some kind of TV series spin-off for this as well? There's Mr. Herbert wrote several books about it. Some of them good, some of them not so.
Yeah, I think the later ones get really weird. with that's proper hardcore sci-fi stuff that they start dealing with, but. I don't know. Like, I remember the miniseries from back in the 2000s, like, that encompassed the first 2 or 3 books, I think. Didn't love it. I thought it was a good stab at it, but clearly they didn't have anywhere near the budget they needed for something like this. So, yeah, I mean, I would be content with these 2 movies that will round out the first book, and we'll see where we go from there, I suppose.
Cool. The time is kind of running out, but we always have a segment in our podcast where we speculate about the conspiracy theory and kind of lay it out. The more far out, the better. And we always ask our guests to provide one on the top of the head.
Conspiracy theory.
Yes.
Yeah, do you have a fun conspiracy theory about anything? And we normally just rant about anything, whatever it might be.
Oh man, I should have had one prepared for this. I'll need to have something like aliens secretly controlling the world's governments or something.
Oh, we've had that several times. The weird thing is that the more spaced out gets, the more times we're right, because it always turns out that the weirdest shit we make up, like a few weeks later, it comes out that it was actually true, like lab leak theory or whatever it might be.
Man, I was always intrigued by I'm sure there was a conspiracy theory that Yuri Gagarin was not the first man in space, that in fact there was another cosmonaut who was launched several weeks before him, but he was severely injured during re-entry, and they kind of covered it up because it would have looked bad for their publicity. It's not like they could parade him through the streets in his hospital gurney. And so they said, right, we'll just pretend this one didn't happen. We'll launch Yuri and hope that he comes back in one piece. And he did. So it's like, right, cool. You're officially the first man in space, comrade. Well done. So that's what I heard. And I think that's a cool theory.
Yeah,
like
that's
that.
a good one. Never heard that one before.
Yeah, it sounds very plausible as well. It's something that the Russians easily would do.
Yeah, the Soviets were mental. I love it.
Oh my God. Yeah. And it's going to be interesting to see what comes out now in the world, because everything now feels like a conspiracy theory almost.
Yeah. And it's like you say, a lot of the things that were conspiracy theories 6 months ago are now being proven correct. So
Yeah.
Scary stuff indeed. It's an interesting time we live in, that's for sure.
Okay, then we will let you go. Thank you so much for taking the time to do this, and good luck with watching The Lord of the Rings.
I'm going to need it.
And all the rest of all the Marvel and Star Wars slog that's coming out of the next few months and years. We'll be looking forward to watching your reviews so that we don't have to watch it.
Thanks, man. Appreciate it.
Thank you so very much.
Bye.
Catch you later, guys.
Thank you. Bye-bye.